welcome everybody. If you're getting tired of the bourbon craze that's going on right now, making you feel like you can't get your favorite bottle, or making you feel like you gotta sit on your favorite bottles because every sip is potentially taking money out of the kids' college fund, then this video may be worth your time. You may be able to replace that favorite with a new bottle. The John J. Bowman Single Barrel Bourbon. A. Smith Bowman Distillery in Fredericksburg, Virginia is rich in history. As a matter of fact, when I was looking into this bottle, I found myself reading up on colonial Virginia and the very early days of Kentucky, just as much as I was reading about the bourbon. Everything from the family that started the farm that would eventually become the distillery, to the copper stills that they use, and even the names that they choose for their products. There's plenty of history to dive into with the A. Smith Bowman Distillery if you're up for it. This specific bottle is named after John J. Bowman, the American pioneer, Revolutionary War officer, and great-great-grandfather of Abraham Bowman, who in 1935 had more corn, rye, and wheat than he needed from his farm, so he decided to start distilling spirits with it. Now, speaking of John J. Bowman, like I said, there's plenty of history to get into with this bottle, and with that in mind, John J. Bowman himself was no stranger to bottling products, as later in life he would make a decent amount of money by bottling the syrup that he harvested from his Kentucky property. Today, the Bowman Distillery is actually owned by the Sazerac Company, and while they don't produce their own whiskey distillate, they do redistill their products in unique copper stills and age on site. This bottle of John J. Bowman is distilled 3 times and aged for 10 years. Based on the parent company being Sazerac and plenty of sources online, there's a good chance that the distillate that's used for John J. Bowman bourbon is actually Buffalo Trace No. 1 mash bill, which is double distilled and runs through Bowman's unique copper still once to be distilled 3 times and then aged anywhere from 9 to 10 years on site at the Bowman Distillery. Another fun fact about the Bowman Distillery is that they actually started producing hand sanitizer at the beginning and height of the pandemic in order to help with the shortages. It makes sense that a distillery would be able to make hand sanitizer, and it's cool to hear that they did their part to help at the height of the pandemic, leveraging processes that they already know and do every day. As far as branding goes, this is a nice classic label with plenty of information right there for the consumer on the shelf with the bottle. And speaking of that bottle, I think it's got a unique shape, but one that is very classically identifiable as a bourbon bottle, and I think it's pretty cool. Got no complaints from me on the branding overall of pretty much all the Bowman products. And if I ever make it out to the Bowman factory tour, which based on their social media posts is a pretty cool tour, I would go ahead and chance looking like a nerd and ask why they chose this specific shape for their bottle, because I bet there's a pretty cool story there about the shape, or maybe it represents something specific to the Bowman family history. And speaking of their social media posts on their website, if you check the Bowman website, this bourbon right here is no stranger to awards, winning a ton of awards and even winning the world's best bourbon award in 2017. So while this may be a little bit of a sleeper for consumers, it's certainly gotten plenty of notice in the industry. As far as the color of this bourbon, to me, it's not a very light or a very dark bourbon. It looks like it's got a nice medium shade. And to me, it looks like a nice reddish caramel. It's got a great color on there. On the nose, I get apple, leather, and some oak. And as far as taste goes, I'm excited to try it. That's a really nice smooth bourbon. Right on the front, I get nice vanilla, chocolate. That smell of that leather is still coming through. I definitely taste that oak, and that vanilla really gives a nice sweetness to the bourbon. And there's also a little bit of nuttiness on there as well that kind of rounds it out. This is a nice bourbon. I like this a lot. The bourbon itself is smooth for being 100 proof And to me, it's got a nice complex, long finish, a nice texture that lingers real nice on the palate and adds a nice dark fruit or like a bland raisin note to the overall profile for me. This is pretty good stuff. Overall, I really enjoyed this bourbon. I gave it a try because it kept coming up on lists of big YouTube channels and big bourbon reviewers of bottles to try if you can't find your old favorites due to the unobtainium bourbon craze that's been going on since the pandemic that has caused a lot of favorites to go scarce or kind of creep up in price. And for me, that's exactly where I land with this bourbon. It's a great bourbon with plenty of complexity and a nice texture. And unlike some of that unobtainium that I've been talking about throughout this video, this bourbon exceeds expectations. It's decently easy to find, and coming in at $50 a bottle, it's reasonably priced as well. Certainly this John J. Bowman is worth a try in my book. I know I like it. Hope you have a good experience if you try it as well. And that is it from me. That's all I got to say today. As always, thanks for watching. I appreciate the views, and have a good one.